Junkie are avoided, except when used by people to describe themselves, in quotes, or to illustrate the depth of stigma that people have faced. The story of harm reduction is multifactorial, multifaceted, multicultural, and multidisciplinary. I hope what you are about to read will whet your appetite as the movement grows. Introduction. I had no intention of quitting. I'd only just been introduced to the glories of shooting speedballs, a seemingly divine mixture of cocaine and heroin. I wanted more. But my friend Dave had decided to kick, and he was about to buy heroin for us for what he hoped would be his last hurrah before rehab. Unnaturally slim, blonde, and dressed like a preppy, Dave's white bread look meant that he was less likely to be arrested when seeking drugs. I was in his tidy East Village apartment waiting for him to return, sitting on his couch with his girlfriend. She was visiting from San Francisco, where he'd formerly lived, in part to ensure he actually made it into treatment. And as we waited, she probably saved my life. It was 1986. Despite being a regular reader of 2 newspapers a day, I had no idea that needle sharing put me at risk for HIV. Dave, who not long afterward became ill with AIDS, was likely already infected. At the time, at least half of all intravenous drug users in New York City silently carried the deadly virus. Your odds of exposure were 50-50, even more if you shared in some neighborhoods. Thankfully, his girlfriend quickly taught me how to protect myself, which I did from that day forward. Don't share, she advised, but if you have no alternative, run bleach through the syringe at least twice, then rinse at least twice with water. I didn't know it at the time, but Dave's girlfriend was practicing a philosophy that would come to be known as harm reduction. Back then, it hadn't yet become a political movement, one that currently includes hundreds of thousands of active supporters. Back then, it wasn't supported by hundreds of studies, backed by governments as a key aspect of dealing with drug issues, or taught as an element of public health programs and a viable career path within medicine, nursing, epidemiology, psychology, and social work. It wasn't a phrase found in op-eds and news stories calling for a better way of fighting pandemics. And it certainly wasn't, as it is today, the first real threat and alternative to international drug prohibition and our current failing addiction treatment system. Even now, the story of harm reduction and its potential to tame the opioid crisis, mitigate future drug problems, and quell other pandemics has never been told. That is the task of undoing drugs. It is a story about how a small group of committed people can change the world, and about the power of a great idea. It is also the story of the rugged persistence of fundamentally bad ideas, and how hard it is to become free of them once they have been widely accepted. It is about how minds change, and how racism can become so embedded in a system of law that it becomes almost invisible, even to those who perpetuate it. It is about how the labels we use for substances shape people's identities, and how that itself can warp law and policy, dehumanizing victims. It is also about how personal, direct human connection and kindness can inspire profound transformation. When I began writing this book, I didn't know who Dave's girlfriend was. In fact, I didn't even know she was his girlfriend. I thought they were just friends. I had only met her once, in 1986, and could no longer remember her first name, let alone recall if I ever knew her last. I wanted to find her and thank her for saving my life, but I knew virtually nothing about her. Once I decided that I was going to try to tell the story of harm reduction, however, I realized I had to do it. Lacking critical information about her made writing my own harm reduction origin story somewhat awkward, for one. Far more importantly, of course, I wanted her to know how grateful I am, and to find out more about the person who had so dramatically altered